Hi, everyone. Professor Philip Travis here, and this announcement is for the Sixties here at SCF. And I just thought I'd let you guys see Enzo. Enzo's our little kitten, one of our newest additions to the family. Um, this is Enzo, and Enzo was born in August of 2019. So he's still a kitten, and he's a nice little addition to the family. And he loves to purr, and so I'm going to put him down right here. I just thought I'd show you our little kitty. Mossy, our dog, is right here, looking very annoyed at that new addition. but anyway, this week for our 60s class, we're going to continue discussing the Vietnam War. And particularly, we're going to continue discussing the manner in which it was fought, and some of the issues with that. I have to say, last week I was very, very happy, very pleased with everybody's reaction to the topic last week, and particularly the film we watched. That's a very powerful film, and I could tell that many of you were moved by that film. And I saw that in the quotes you used from the film. And so great work last week. I was really happy with that. That was the reaction that I really wanted to see. And we're going to continue that this week. The subject of discussion this week does not get easier. It gets maybe even more difficult. Not maybe, almost certainly more difficult. This week we are going to be staying with the Vietnam War. We're going to be examining the My Lai massacre, which of course was a massacre during, broadly speaking, during part of the events at the beginning of 1968 during the Tet Offensive. Um, so this was a case where there was several hundred civilians that were killed by American soldiers. And we are going to watch a film on the My Lai massacre. It's got a quiz associated with it, just like last week's film. Don't use a smartphone to take the quiz, because you'll have an error. So make sure you use a PC, a Mac, laptop, something like that. And this is about the My Lai massacre. The My Lai massacre is one of the most, if not the most, controversial and public um, military tribunal, military trial, I guess I should say, in American history. Again, it happened at the beginning of 1968 in the northern area of South Vietnam. And this was in the backdrop of the Tet Offensive, which was a major countrywide offensive that had been launched by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong guerrillas in the South. My Lai came out in news reports, and I'm going to leave some of the details for the video to tell you about this, but it ultimately came out very publicly in news reports beginning in 69 and 70, and it culminated in a massive court-martial trial of one of the commanders on the ground at the time, Lieutenant William Calley. And this is going to be our subject for this week's discussion. We don't have a reading this week. I want you to focus on this documentary, which is about an hour long, and it's very powerful. And there's a quiz that will pop up. The questions will pop up as you watch the documentary. And I encourage you to do any outside supplemental research that you need to participate in this as well. There's lots and lots of supplemental materials from the trial, the transcript, the interviews with subjects in the trial that you may or may not wish to use. And certainly you may do that. I encourage that. What we're doing in our discussion this week is we're basically going to have a sort of, in our discussion forum as best we can, we are going to have our own little trial of Lieutenant William Calley. I have assigned half of the class, and I have the details in terms of the alphabetical order in the discussion forum, so make sure you read that so you can see which side you're on. Half of the class will be prosecuting Lieutenant William Calley. Lieutenant William Calley was charged with multiple counts of premeditated murder, effectively charges of war crimes. You're going to be responsible for prosecuting Lieutenant William Calley. The other half of the class is going to be responsible for defending Calley, fighting for his acquittal, a reduced sentence, or what have you. There are a number of different angles you can take with respect to this. And so what I want is I want everyone by Thursday, hopefully. Everybody's in there by Thursday. Certainly do it even if you're in there by Friday. But I want everyone to go in there and make a post supporting your position. You won't be able to see any other activity in the discussion forum until you've posted. And then once you post, I want us to have a discussion about this. Why do we feel that Callie should or should not be found guilty? This trial was a massive, massive public event, and I'm going to include a collection of some of the songs that were written about this trial in the early 1970s. These were songs written by, in some cases, R&B artists. There were famous folk artists like Pete Seeger. There were country artists that wrote songs about this trial. This was a huge, public phenomenon in the United States, and one that very much gripped the attention of the American people. Callie, the trial occurs when Richard Nixon is president, even though the event happened when Lyndon Johnson was still president. Callie, well, you know what? I'm going to save those details for the video, because you're going to watch this video and all these details are going to come out. So I'm just going to save. I was going to start talking about it, but I'm going to save it for the video so you can kind of take it in within the context of this documentary film that we're going to be watching this week, which I think you'll find to be very, very powerful. So make sure you go to the discussion forum. Look for alphabetically what group you're in, and then be prepared to formulate a defense or a prosecution of Lieutenant William Callie. And I think my hope is this will not only be something that is powerful and kind of makes you think about this situation in Vietnam, but also the larger picture of how the United States was prosecuting the war in Vietnam. What did American policy look like in Vietnam? And what was the experience there for the villagers in Vietnam, as well as for the American soldiers who fought in Vietnam? An American army, by the way, and this is the factoid, an American army that its average age was only 19 years old. So the factoid for this week is that during the Vietnam War, the average age of the American soldier in Vietnam was actually only 19 years old. To give you some comparison, during World War II, the average age of a soldier in World War II was 26 years old. So during the Vietnam War, we have a younger army. In many cases, we have a less experienced army because of the rotation of the draft, which amounted to a significant percentage of soldiers. So we had a young and inexperienced army fighting in a very, very, very difficult circumstance, a guerrilla war against an enemy that was often not seen, a war in which some 20% of casualties happened from booby traps that you couldn't see, a war in which oftentimes you faced casualties from snipers that you could never actually see and target and really fight in the way that you might imagine. Created a very frustrating fighting environment. So the factoid for this week is the average soldier's age during Vietnam for the United States was 19 years old. So this week, the trial of Lieutenant William Callie. Watch the documentary, take the quiz, do that early, and review supplemental materials as well as you see fit. You can search for the trial documents online, and they're readily accessible. If you have any trouble finding that, email me, and I can provide those to you. Let's have a great week, and I will see you in the discussion forum.